Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Wednesday, October 7th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Pence-Harris debate will be the topic of today's podcast. But first, we're going to get to some market performance because, yesterday we were talking, during yesterday's podcast, the circus continues in how the president just can't seem to get out of his way. And then this just sort of somewhat nonsensical tweet that Thunder Thumbs threw out there. And there was a couple of them. Now, the first one made a little bit more sense, that he was trying to convey that he was feeling better, that there was no symptoms, that everything seems to be going according to plan in his recovery from COVID, and we hope that that's the case. And, of course, that gave a bit of a boost to the markets, at least that's sort of the excuse. And then later in the day, around 3 p.m., with an hour left to go on the stock exchange, Thunder Thumbs tweets out that he is ordering his representatives to stop the negotiations with respect to another round of spending. And the markets just reversed course like that. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost about 375 points after being up nearly 200 for the day. And that became a head-scratcher because the president, again earlier in the same day, yesterday, was patting himself on the back for having such a strong and vibrant economy in a stock market that is once again getting close to all-time highs. It just doesn't make any sense that you would come out and say you are ordering your representatives to cease further negotiations for a spending bill. He has to know that the stock market has just been chomping at the bit for another round of spending. So why would you pull that away? Again, is this the madness kicking in from some of these drugs that he is on? Did he get confused? Is he trying to manipulate the market and he or his buddies had some short positions on and he wanted to make some big money real quick? Who knows? Could be all of the above, some combination thereof. But that was a head scratcher. And then, once the podcast was finished and I was uploading it to the various sites that it goes out to, I was looking at the overnight futures trading, which we talk about here. And they were a lot higher than they were a few moments ago when I was reading them off to the audience. And I said, what's going on here? And I turn on the news, and guess what? Thunder Thumbs already reversed course. Can't have the stock market going down, can we, Mr. President? Reverse course already. Saying, oh, you know what, we can do something. Let's put something on my desk and I will sign it. Can we do another $1,200? Can we do another $1,200 stimulus check? Can we do that, please? And what about the airlines? Can we do another airline bailout, please? And it was $20 billion. Now it's being upped to $25 billion once again. And of course, we talked about the math on this just the other day in our podcast, To Bail Out or Not to Bail Out. You take your $20 billion, you divide it by 32,000 jobs because that's what the airlines were threatening. If you don't bail us out again, we're going to have to lay off 32,000 people. And we said at $20 billion, that equates to $625,000 per job. Well, apparently that's not enough. So Thunder Thumb said, well, let's up it to $25 billion. Well, if you do that, and you divide it by that same 32,000 jobs, it comes out to $781,000 per job. Actually, $781,250 per job. Can't make this stuff up. These are publicly traded companies. They can issue stock. They can sell off assets. They can go to the corporate bond market. I mean, we know the Federal Reserve is buying it up, so why not? Why do they have to come to the American taxpayer? And why aren't these questions asked? They were not asked during the first national disgrace of a debate between Trump and Biden. And this question was not brought up this evening. And even if it was, it probably would have been ignored. There was a lot of questions that were just flat out dodged and ignored. But we'll get to that shortly. But of course, the markets loved this. Why wouldn't they? They're crackheads. The crack dealer is now promising more crack once again. So why wouldn't they go higher? And they did. Pretty much 2 percentage points higher across the board. The dollar index, nonetheless, is down slightly, trading at 93.58. Overnight futures trading, we have the Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 0.4%. The S&P 500 is currently up about 0.5%. The NASDAQ 100 is currently up about 0.2%. The cash trade in Japan is up about 1 percentage point. This is on the back of some friendly remarks from the Bank of Japan praising fiscal and monetary policy. So this is par for the course everywhere, not just here in the United States. This is going to be the death knell to the global economy. Just wait. A mixed bag across the pond in Europe. Cash trade in Australia is up about 1 percentage points as well. On the share price front, you got Apple up about 1.7%, Tesla gaining 2 7/10, Microsoft up about 2 percentage points for the day, Amazon gaining 3%, Alphabet, the parent company of Google, gaining 0.5%, and Facebook, to round it out, was down about 0.2%. Despite the fact that yesterday we had some news where the House Democrats are now claiming that they are going to be going after some of these larger tech firms, saying they're too big, they're monopolistic, and I guess they want to be the trust busters, if you will, but clearly the market was shrugging that news off today. WTI is trading at $39.96 a barrel. We still do have Hurricane Delta on its way to the Gulf Coast, but we will see what happens over the coming days. It's supposed to make landfall on Friday. Brent is trading at $42.07 a barrel. Natural gas is at $2.58. Precious metals, we have gold, not too much movement today, trading at $1,885 an ounce. That is spot price. And silver had a nice rebound. Silver is trading at $23.78 per ounce. And then to round it out, Uncle Sam's 10-year junk note is yielding 0.78%. So that's that. It was the big flip-flop from Thunder Thumbs. That should not surprise anybody, except maybe the speed in which it happened. I mean, that one is really one for the history books, even from this president. But again, I question, where is the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, and even the FBI? Because this is blatant market manipulation. We've been going through this for 3.5, almost 4 years now. The China trade deal, now it's with the vaccine or some type of therapeutic. Now it continues with more rounds of some type of spending, which they're going to call stimulus. Whether the Federal Reserve is going to act, whether it's going to be negative interest rates or quantitative easing. It's always, just keep promising it, just drip, 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 whether or not it happens or not. And you have to understand, too, ladies and gentlemen, every time I think, at least for the most part, when whatever the issue was, the China trade deal, the Federal Reserve doing something, a vaccine, no vaccine, spending, no spending, whenever the real thing actually happens, the markets sell off. It's buy the rumor, sell the fact. Okay? So I don't think that this time is going to be any different. Once we get another round of spending, and there's going to be another round of spending, who gets it is up for grabs, and how much is a question to be asked. But another one is coming down the pike. Is it going to be before Election Day, after? To me, it makes no difference, because it's the same thing. It's money that we do not have, that we should not be handing out. And another thing that the president noted, and rightly so, and we mentioned this yesterday, is the fact that from the Nobody Cares Act, there is still quite a bit of money that has been appropriated from the Nobody Cares Act that is sitting within the Treasury Department. And we also know, through the emergency facilities that reside with the Federal Reserve, there's still a lot of money there, too, for smaller businesses, for Main Street. So now you have to ask the question, the money's already been appropriated. Clearly, the president knows it exists, and all of this money from the Nobody Cares Act hasn't even all been spent yet. Then what's the problem, Jack? It's been appropriated. It's in the Treasury Department. You're the executive. Why aren't you moving that money then? This is a basic question. This should have been asked during tonight's debate. But it wasn't. And it's probably not going to be asked during the town hall next week either. Or the day after, or the day after. Nobody wants to ask these basic questions that are right in your face. Survey after survey, household surveys, 50% of the country's broke. 30 to 40% of small businesses that still remain alive for the time being, if they don't receive some form of governmental assistance, they are going to close their doors for good by the end of the year. So what's the wait? Again, I'm against all these bailouts, but I'm not there. The money's already been appropriated, and a lot of it has already been spent. So what's the holdup? And it seems that they want to prioritize the airline industry over small businesses. Well, what a surprise. I'm not surprised. This audience who's been with me shouldn't be surprised by this either. This is the two-party system. Big corporations line the political coffers of these politicians. Small businesses don't. It's a very easy equation. Follow the money, ask who benefits. You do those two things, you're going to get a really clear picture of what's going on here, which is why you have to abandon the two-party system. But that's that. Now on to the debate between Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris. They did what they had to do. This was definitely more civil, thank God, than what we witnessed last week with President Trump and Joe Biden. But, I mean, that was an extremely low bar. But nonetheless, they jumped it, much more civil, talked about some issues. Again, in my opinion, not too much on the structural. COVID-19, some stuff on the economy, a little bit about race relations, the police, justice, some touch on foreign policy. No home runs from either side. The Republicans, and especially the White House, have had a pretty bad week. Now, that pretty much goes without saying. From the debate, from the president and the first lady and others within the White House contracting COVID-19 and all the hoopla that's been going on since. Some of the polls starting to shift heavily towards Biden-Harris. And, you know, last week when we were talking before the first presidential debate, there was really only a small portion, if we want to believe the polls, and I believe that they're pretty accurate on this, because this is just, in my opinion, my estimation, such a referendum on the president. Most people know if they want to give this guy another 4 years or not. So when the polls come out, as they did prior to the first debate between President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, about 6% of the country remained undecided. Well, now we're seeing in the polls that have been taking place following the first debate that the vast majority of those undecideds seem to be going to Biden-Harris. And if that's the case, this could potentially be a landslide, and not just on the top ticket, but this could really carry and turn into a blue wave, if you will. Because we're seeing a lot of tight Senate races. We're seeing that the state of Iowa, which we've been mentioning here on Electoral College Map Math, that could turn from a red state, if you will, from supporting Trump last time to going blue. Even some of the Senate races there. Same thing with Arizona, could flip to Biden. It was a Republican state last time. It went to President Trump. So this could turn into a blue wave. And I don't think that that's going to be good for the country, but I'm not going to be surprised personally if that happens, because the Republicans have no spine when it comes to standing up for a lot of core principles that they've just sort of railroaded and allowed the president to sort of just corrupt and hijack the Republican Party. Now, I'm not surprised by this. I haven't been a Republican for years. I've been a libertarian for quite a while. This is why I left the Republican Party years ago, because they're all talk, no action. It's just their form of big government. So now they very well may reap what they have sown here. And I think that that could cause some issues. And I've stated this previously, that if the Republicans don't stand up to this president and a lot of his character flaws, that this could do some significant damage to the Republican Party. Now, again, I don't care, because I don't like this two-party system, but you really don't want it being lopsided to the Democrats either, which is one of the reasons why I've posed the question on numerous occasions. What would you rather have? Would you rather have a President Trump and a Congress that is comprised of a majority of Democrats in the House and the Senate, or would you rather have a President Biden with the Republicans in control of the House and the Senate? Wouldn't you rather have some sort of divided government? But how would you rather have that ticket play out? Because both are realistic, even in this election on the 3rd of November. That's a realistic scenario. What would you rather have? What do you think is going to happen? And you have to understand, too, not in the back of your mind, but in the front of your mind, front and center, that the President of the United States is not a king. He is not a dictator. He cannot legislate. That's not how it works. So think long and hard about that question. What would you rather have? Because it's quite possible that this is going to be a blue wave. I don't see this turning into a red wave like we saw in 2016. This is a different race. This is a different map. Trump was the outsider 4 years ago. He was up against a status quo politician in Hillary Clinton who's got a ton of baggage. Let's give this guy a shot. That's what the country said. Is the country going to give him another 4 years? I think that's a much higher hurdle to jump this time around. And we're starting to see that in the polls. And if the president cannot get women and the black vote, he's done. Because if the women vote and the black vote goes to Biden-Harris, this is going to be a shellacking. It's just going to be a shellacking across the country. Not just on the popular vote, but electorally speaking as well. And the numbers are not looking good for the Trump-Pence ticket, and you're even starting to see some break from senior citizens going to Biden-Harris. And a lot of this, probably with respect to the senior citizens, is because they seem to be the most negatively impacted when it comes to COVID-19, and they probably don't like the shenanigans and the back and forth that comes from the White House, namely President Trump. The man is his own worst enemy. I've said it here a number of times. If he could just get out of his way and shut his mouth and stop tweeting, President Trump probably have a pretty good chance of winning and maybe even having another red wave, if you will. But he can't get out of his own way. He can't shut up. He can't stop tweeting. And people are just, I think, sick and tired of it. I know I am. Well, what did he tweet now? And what is he going to tweet next? I mean, this is front and center. This is a prime example. Yesterday, I'm ordering my representatives to cease negotiations. Market sells off. Oh, my bad. Didn't mean for that to happen. So it's either massive incompetence or it's massive manipulation or it's, a combination of both depending on the day. This is unacceptable. We have to do better than this. And I'm not advocating that better is Joe Biden. But the president now has set such a low bar, it's disgraceful in and of itself. Vote third party. Vote for Joe Jorgensen of the Libertarian Party. People say, oh, she'll never win. Yeah, with that attitude, vote for her and she will. The country was looking for a third party candidate during that first debate because it was such a disgrace. That's what shot up in Google search terms. Third party candidates, the Libertarian Party, and how do I leave the United States if you want to move to Canada or somewhere else. That's how much of a disgrace that was that people during the debate were looking, how the hell do I get out of here? And looking for that third option. When Joe Jorgensen should have been on that debate stage. And she would have tore them both up. Talking about the structural issues that we talk about here every single day. Every day. She is on all 50 ballots. Everybody is going to see her name. She deserves to be heard. Maybe you don't like what she says. Fair enough. But she's on all 50 ballots. She deserves to be heard, and it's as simple as that. But this is a two-party system in this country. Guess that makes us twice as good as the Chinese Communist Party. Coke or Pepsi, red or blue, Republican, Democrat. That's it, and you're going to like it. So much for the land of the free, home of the brave. It's ridiculous. It's in your face. And that should tell you everything you need to know. Maybe you don't understand the mechanism and everything that I talk about, monetary policy, negative interest rates, what the Federal Reserve's doing, inflation, stagflation. Maybe you don't get that. I understand. But the two-party system, how corrupt it is, how incompetent it is, how corrupt it is, how much more do you need to see? And you're going to see how bad it gets when all of this fairy dust that they've sprinkled over to the amounts of several $trillion starts to wear off, and it already is. Which is why we have one member of the Federal Reserve day after day after day, sometimes a handful of them out on the same day like today, saying we need more fiscal stimulus. Because they know the game is up. They know this house of cards is coming down. The crackheads couldn't care less on Wall Street. President Trump just wants the stock market up at any cost. Well, at any cost is quite expensive. And we're all going to find this out the hard way. And it doesn't need to be this way, but that's what's going to happen because we don't have any leadership. We don't have any honesty coming from the White House, coming from the Capitol building, coming from the Federal Reserve. It's nowhere to be seen. And it's going to get much, much nastier than what we've already witnessed, and it hasn't been good thus far. But I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but this debate, it's the vice presidential debate. Does it carry a little bit more weight because Trump and Biden will be the oldest presidents ever? Yeah. I mean, I guess a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's moving the needle. Senator Harris didn't put her foot in her mouth. She did what she had to do. And Mike Pence, coming off of a bad week for the Republicans in the White House, did what he had to do. His performance this evening was very reminiscent to me as to how he performed in 2016 versus Senator Kaine. Mike Pence is a rock. Now, you might not like him, but he's a rock. He's steady as she goes. He had his talking points. He had a couple of his one-liners in there. He knew what he wanted to hit. And if the opportunity showed itself, I think he exploited it, and he took it to his advantage. Senator Harris, she had a couple good points, I think mainly with respect to COVID-19, because this thing has been bungled. I think the talking point that's coming out of the White House, that's coming from the president, that was reiterated by Mike Pence is really, we stopped all of those flights from China. And that seems to be the end of their argument. We did it early. And that saved a countless number of lives, ladies and gentlemen, and that's it. Which is nonsense because that's not entirely true because there were a lot of exemptions and there were still a lot of people that were coming from China into the United States. And what about the people who were on the East Coast where most of them came from Europe? Because Italy had a major outbreak as well. Now, yeah, you shut some of those European flights down too, but after a lot of the damage was already done on a virus that can be highly contagious, especially early on when you're still learning a lot about it. And we still don't know the long-term effects of this. That's going to take some time. So I think that the Trump administration, and again, this was evidenced this evening by Mike Pence, they really don't have a strong argument with respect to COVID-19. We stopped the flights from China, and that's it. I mean, not a good answer when you say, Mr. Vice President, if we did so well here in the United States, then why is our death rate so much higher than in South Korea and in Germany and so many other countries? Clearly, we could have done more. And I think Kamala Harris missed a good opportunity here to really hit home with the Bob Woodward book, with the Bob Woodward interviews with President Trump. Because she could have called Pence and Trump out both saying, this is not fake news, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. This is not an anonymous source, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. This is the President of the United States on tape, downplaying the virus. Here's what he said. He knew it was bad. He didn't come out and tell the American people the truth. Bing, bang, boom. I downplayed it. Then he's in the town hall. I upplayed it. Now he has COVID-19 and he's downplaying it again because he has care at Walter Reed and in the White House that nobody else is going to get. And he thinks that, I guess, everybody else is going to get that same type of care, which is not the case. While using experimental drugs which have not been approved for everybody and their mother as of yet. Now, if they prove to be successful, good. Then we have a viable therapeutic. But don't pretend, Mr. President, that everybody is going to get the same type of treatment that you got, so now nobody has to worry about it. This, again, just goes back and forth of whether this thing is serious, it's not serious, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, go back and forth. And the people don't like it. And I think Joe Biden had a good one-liner when he said, the American people don't panic, Mr. President, you panicked. Which I think is more or less the case. Because there has not been a great plan in handling this virus, especially with respect to how other countries have been performing relative to the United States. We should have done a much better job, but we didn't, and now we have to live with those consequences. There were a couple questions that were asked by the moderator where both candidates just simply dodged them, didn't want to answer them at all. One such question was, have either of you had a serious conversation or plan on having a serious conversation with the top of the ticket about their age and what might happen if something happens, they become incapacitated, they should pass away, what have you. Have you had those conversations? Pence wasn't having any of it. He went off on a tangent. Kamala Harris wasn't having any of it. But what she did, I recall, is she took that 2 minutes to explain to the audience who she is, what she has accomplished, basically giving her elevator pitch, if you will, in the couple minutes that she had, which was probably somewhat of a smart move because this might be the first time the country has had a good hard look at Kamala Harris. Maybe a lot of people weren't paying attention to the Democratic presidential debates earlier on in the year. And last year. So this was really a refresher, or really the first introduction to who she is. So she used that time wisely, but nonetheless, neither of them answered that question. And again, for the life of me, I don't know why Kamala Harris could not answer the question when it was posed to her. Will you, if you should become the vice president, and Joe Biden obviously the president, will you try to pack the Supreme Court? And again, she dodged it. Why can't they just say no? Even if that's a lie, why can't they just say no? So clearly there's some politics here. They must have some internal polling or something that they think that because there's such an issue now with the Supreme Court due to the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and now you have a lot more of the Democratic base coming out claiming that that's an issue. Maybe they don't want to alienate them and push something off the table definitively, even though they could be lying anyway. Now, net, I really don't think this is going to make that much of a difference. I think most people are focused on the economy, they're focused on healthcare, they're focused on COVID-19, and it's a referendum on Donald Trump. It's a call for civility, it's a call for some semblance of normalcy, whatever that might be. So, yes, maybe on the fringe it gets somebody out there, but I don't think it's going to have that huge of an impact with respect to the views of the Supreme Court from either the Trump-Pence ticket or the Biden-Harris ticket. But we shall see. Questions on the economy. I mean, we know what's been going on with this economy. I really think that Kamala Harris missed an opportunity to really drive home some data points that she could have rubbed in the face of the president and Vice President Pence. They want to talk about jobs. Well, more jobs were created under the Obama-Biden administration in the last 4 years as opposed to the first 4 years of the Trump-Pence administration. Again, these are just the numbers. We've brought this up many times before, that you can hit home on a lot of these issues. Now, when Obama-Biden came in, they were walking into the great financial crisis. So early on, you had massive deficits, but the deficits were cut in half over the span of the administration. Now they've gone up fourfold. Okay, so you could have picked a handful of data points that really would have rubbed it in the nose of Pence, making his argument that this was the greatest economy ever beforehand, and of course it wasn't. Okay, do I like deregulation? Of course. Do I want tax cuts? Of course. I want the income tax abolished. But you have to cut spending too, and that's not what happened. That's not what has happened, and it's not what's going to happen. They want more spending. This is cutting your nose to spite your face. It doesn't make any sense. It's going to create inflation, which is what it has done, and it's what it's going to continue to do, because we don't have the money. But they don't want to bring that point up. I mean, some people think that it was a really great economy, and the reason was because of all of the deficit spending. This would be an analogous, if you will, to, let's say you make $100,000 a year. All right? In many parts of the country, that's a very good, healthy salary. But that's not enough for you. You want to spend $200,000. Now you go out and you buy the nicer car, you put an addition onto the house, maybe you put a swimming pool in the backyard, you go to nicer restaurants more frequently, maybe you take a few vacations during the year and buy some nicer clothes while you're at it. Now, outsiders looking in are going to say, well, John must be doing very well for himself. Look at the house, look at the swimming pool, look at the car, look at the vacations. Ah, yes, but that was with an additional $100,000 worth of spending that he does not have. Now, how sustainable do you think that is for John and his family? Not at all. Same thing goes for the country. Very short-term oriented, not long-term at all. Now, these jokers aren't going to bring this up because they don't care about it or they don't understand it. Both, to me, is unacceptable. Either of those options. But that's why we are in the situation in which we find ourselves, because nobody wants to talk about the structural issues. And so this is going to continue until we have another president, and then it's going to continue thereafter, because whoever it is not discussing the structural issue. So it's going to be the same song and dance, and people are going to wonder why nothing is getting solved. Well, there you have it. So if there's another debate, it'll be next week, town hall style between Trump and Biden. Whether that'll be in person or virtual remains to be seen at this juncture, but we will, of course, cover it and have that discussion. So there you have it, folks. Pence-Harris debate. They did what they had to do. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.